This is Module 2, Section 4, Motor Unit Types. So in the last lesson, we reviewed the cortical motor system and action planning. We are doing motor unit types in this lesson, and then we will review motor unit properties. So we know that the motor cortex communicates with other regions of the brain to accomplish movement, and we know that the pathway from the motor cortex to the muscles is afferent, and from the muscles to the motor cortex is efferent. Our questions for this lesson are: what is a motor unit? What happens at the neuromuscular junction, and how does a muscle contract? Before we focus on the minute details of movement, we should get a good idea overall of the structure of muscles. Muscles are actually made up of multiple kinds of tissues, including muscle fibers and connective tissues that surround and protect the muscles. Muscle fibers are long cells roughly shaped like a cylinder that constitute most of the muscle and are surrounded by a conductive membrane, which will be important to remember for later on. Each muscle fiber cell contains multiple nuclei and other structures such as mitochondria that you would find in a normal body cell. The muscle fiber also contains rod-like structures called myofibrils or myofibrils, depending on how you pronounce it. The myofibrils can be divided further into sarcomeres, which are distinguished through striations on the surface of the myofibrils. Sarcomeres are the site of contraction. The combined action of many sarcomeres along a myofibril in the muscle fiber together causes muscle contraction. I don't need you to know the specifics of how sarcomeres work, but I want you to be familiar with the terminology, and if you're interested, look up sliding filament theory. It is some fun stuff about muscle contraction. But back to motor units. Each muscle in your body is composed of many motor units. Motor units are the site of the neuromuscular junction, which is where the neuron meets the muscle. When a movement occurs, the signal is sent from the motor cortex through the spinal cord and then to the neuromuscular junction. The action potential reaches the terminal and causes release of acetylcholine, which when bound to the muscles through a cascade of other reactions causes contraction of the muscles. The acetylcholine is then broken down in the synapses by acetylcholine esterase. Acetylcholine is the most prominent neurotransmitter at the neuromuscular junction. The motor unit itself has two components, the neuron and the muscle fibers that are innervated by that neuron. So each motor unit only has one neuron, but can have numerous muscle fibers. As I said before, the membrane of the muscle fiber contains conductive properties, meaning that when acetylcholine binds to the receptor, an action potential propagates down the muscle fiber. The number of fibers that a neuron innervates depends on the muscle. Muscle fibers that are highly innervated are typically for finer control. Innervation number refers to the number of muscle fibers contained within a motor unit. If a motor unit has a small innervation number, this means that one neuron innervates a small number of muscle fibers, thus providing finer control than muscles with large innervation numbers. And now we are on to types. In common language, muscle fibers are typically referred to as slow twitch and fast twitch fibers, which are also referred to as type 1 and type 2, respectively. In reality, muscle fibers can still be divided into two categories of slow and fast, but more correctly should be identified further by the source of their energy. The identification of fast or slow comes from the contraction time, which is the time between when the signal is received at the neuromuscular junction to when the muscle contracts. Oxidative fibers obtain their energy through aerobic respiration, which means they require oxygen, and glycolytic fibers obtain their energy through anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration relies on energy stores within the body, so these fibers use up energy quickly and thus become fatigued quickly. The fiber diameter indicates the strength of the maximal force a muscle can exert, with smaller fibers exerting smaller forces. Based on all of this information, we can characterize each muscle fiber type. Slow oxidative fibers have long contraction times, require oxygen for energy, and can exert smaller forces for long periods of time. Most muscles made from this fiber type are used in maintaining posture and balance. Fast oxidative fibers have shorter contraction times and exert slightly larger forces than slow oxidative fibers and are used for normal movements and light exercise. Finally, fast glycolytic fibers have the shortest contraction time, use energy from anaerobic respiration, and can exert large forces for short amounts of time. A muscle can be made up of multiple fiber types, but each motor unit only has one fiber type. So kind of a review, and to put this in the context of EMG, a motor unit consists of a neuron and muscle fibers. One neuron can innervate any number of the same type of muscle fibers. Muscle contraction occurs when a signal is emitted from the neuron of a motor unit and an action potential propagates down the muscle fiber. The action potentials that occur on the muscle fiber are called motor unit action potentials and can be recorded through use of electromyography, which we will be studying in depth later on in this course. But here's just a simple image of how it works. You have electrodes on the skin with some kind of amplifier. They pick up those motor unit action potentials and are decoded through some computer interface. So a quick summary from today, a motor unit is made up of a neuron and muscle fibers. Each muscle fiber is only innervated by one neuron, and one neuron can innervate multiple muscle fibers. Motor unit characteristics are dependent on the muscle fiber types, and the activity of these units can be picked up using EMG due to the electrical properties of the motor unit. And in the next lesson, we will be diving deeper into the specific characteristics of the motor unit.